We're officially in the home stretch now, where more and more teams are having their final primetime games. This will be Houston's last primetime game this week, and it might be Kansas City's as well. They have a Christmas week game, so y'all will get to vote on that. Please, dear God, do not vote for the Chiefs, all right? I don't want to have to make another Chiefs drink. I've been scraping the bottom of the barrel forever for Chiefs drinks, and I'm continuing to do so this week with the Mahomie Bomb. This drink comes to us courtesy of Block 15, a Kansas City sports bar, and was created for last year's Super Bowl. Now, as befitting a sports bar created drink, it's not exactly the most refined drink out there, consisting of raspberry vodka, pineapple juice, and cranberry juice, which is then shaken, served over ice, and then topped off with a Red Bull. So overall, a slight spin on the vodka Red Bull with 2 additional Chiefs-colored ingredients added in for good measure. Houston's representative is another variant on a classic. It's the Flaming Dr. Pepper. Now, despite the name, the Flaming Dr. Pepper does not actually contain any Dr. Pepper. Instead, it is a shot of Amaretto and overproof rum, which is lit on fire and then dropped into a glass of beer to extinguish that flame. Apparently, the resulting combination of those 3 liquids tastes like Dr. Pepper, and that's where the name comes from. Now, despite how distinct and regional this drink is, it actually has a disputed origin. As far as I could tell, the 2 main sources for where this comes from are the Ptarmigan Club near Texas A&M and the Gold Saloon in New Orleans. Now, as far as I can tell, the Gold Saloon has the slight edge in terms of online recognition, but the drink as a whole is definitely more closely associated with like college rites of passage. Sadly, I will not be setting our drink on fire as I don't have any matches, and the last thing I want to do is set off any of our fire alarms. I'm also shrinking both of these drinks considerably, essentially just keeping their core flavor components and stripping out all of the filler. So with that said, our final spec is 3/4 of an ounce of Amaretto. This is a hazelnut liqueur in case you've never had it before. There's a secret second cap hidden underneath the first cap. Ahahaha. Forgot about that. This fuck-ass bottle. But yeah, hazelnut liqueur, it's one of the 3 ingredients in the Flaming Dr. Pepper, so it'll be included in this drink. This is gonna be a weird drink. I'm just telling you right now. This is gonna be a weird one. Hold on to your butts. Even I don't know what I'm in for with this. All right. 3/4 of an ounce of our OFTD rum. So this is our overproof rum. I saw a really funny comment from someone online talking about this drink, where a recipe called for, I think probably like a Ray and Nephew overproof rum, and someone was like, just use 151, and it's like, they don't make 151 anymore. You can't use it. 3/4 of an ounce of our pineapple juice. Slowly, going through this bottle as much as we can. Just like, God, it's so much pineapple juice. I'm doing my best here. But yeah, it'll be an interesting flavor combination. Then finally, 1/2 ounce of our cranberry juice. So we have 2 very sort of fruity flavors and 2 very not fruity flavors. Best case scenario, this turns out kind of like a tiki drink, where we have sort of those like rum notes and that hazelnut blending well with the fruit. Worst case scenario, this drink is just hot garbage, and hopefully I get some good reactions out of it. I'm gonna shake that up. And the reason I shrunk this drink down so much was so that we could strain it into our Nick Nora glass. Look at that, that's not a bad color. It's a nice little sort of pinkish red, little rose color mayhaps. We get a nice little head as well from the pineapple juice. Now the Chiefs' devil magic seems to have run out this year, but regardless, I have chosen to call this drink the Flaming Devil. Let's give it a try. Ooh. Ooh, okay. Very long evolution in this drink. Wow, it's still going. This is definitely on the good end. In terms of like the spectrum of possible outcomes, we're definitely pretty close to the good end of this one. This isn't a bad drink. This is weird. I need to process this a bit longer. Yeah, so the amaretto plus the pineapple juice and the cranberry juice is a very strange flavor combination. That sort of hazel, like nuttiness, plus these like very kind of distinct fruit notes. It's a very kind of like nuts and berries kind of flavor profile to it. Just very strange, but very good. I think maybe it's a little bit too, no, it's not too dry. There actually is a good mouthfeel. There's this weird sort of section in this very long evolution of the drink because all three of those flavors kind of stick around for a really long time and kind of fade in and out as this drink just sort of sits, in your mouth on your taste buds. There's a brief period of time where sort of all the sweetness disappears for a little bit and you get this sort of like really harsh clash. It's like near the end of this drink. But that initial mouthfeel is really good, and like aside from that little window where things kind of go a bit off, this is actually a lovely little combination. It's surprisingly drinkable as well. Like I guess, we've kind of, this is absolutely probably one of the weirdest drinks I've made in terms of like, there's no true base spirit in this drink. We're kind of using our overproof rum, our OFTD rum, as our base spirit, but we're also kind of using Amaretto as a base spirit, So instead of like a sort of 40 or 50% spirit as the base, we've got the Amaretto, which is probably what, 20%? Let me see. 21%. Yep. So we've got a 21% Amaretto, but then a 69% overproof rum. And so the end result is that we've actually kind of evened out to about a 40% base spirit. But it's strange because it's not, the OFTD rum, because it is so high proof, has a bit more punch to it. And so I think, one, obviously, there is no base spirit that tastes like Amaretto plus OFTD rum. Like that, it just doesn't exist. I guess, like maybe you could get like a really kind of funky, there might be an aged rum out there somewhere that kind of does something similar, but you wouldn't have as strong of hazelnut notes. You wouldn't have the additional sweetness of Amaretto being a liqueur. And so like that, just that core sort of like base layer, our spirits in this drink, is something unlike anything you're likely to have before. And then you add on to it just, sort of a zig and a zag where it's like, okay, well, we've got, this sort of like really baking spice heavy OFTD rum. We've got the hazelnut and the sweetness from the Amaretto. Surely we're gonna sort of lean into those, sort of brown notes with like some additional like baking spices, maybe some like honey sweetness, something like that. And it's like, no, we're actually going to zig in the exact opposite direction and bring in some like really sort of tart, tropical isn't quite the right word, but it's kind of along those lines with the pineapple juice and the cranberry juice, where these are sort of very bright, very very bright fruit flavors that aren't actually super sweet, and so it's this very sort of interesting like boop boop kind of flavor dynamic. And as it sits, there is a little bit, there is a tiny little connection starting to be formed in the back of my sort of flavor library, where I'm like, oh yeah, that overproof rum and the Amaretto, that actually is connecting some of those Dr. Pepper notes. And I think the cranberry is helping it get there in a very kind of strange way. It's so weird. Yeah, oh my God. Wow, this is a weird little thing. This is like, also I love the color. Like it's a beautiful kind of like, just sort of rosy, like almost not quite blood red, but like if someone were to like draw blood in like a more lighthearted show. I don't know. All I can think of, this is really funny. I've been watching a lot of Full Metal Alchemist recently, and all I can think of is like, man, this looks like a Philosopher's Stone. God, yeah, it's a weird flavor combination, but it's not bad. I think like, I mean, I don't even know how to change this drink because this is like such a weird, like out there curveball idea. I don't know what modifications I'd make to it, but I'm glad I made it because this is like, it's not tiki. I think that's the one thing, right? Is like immediately where my brain kind of goes for context for this drink is like, well, maybe it's some sort of tiki drink, right? Like maybe that's what this is wanting to be. But having it served up in such a tight little package in this Nick Nora glass is like so antithetical to so much of what tiki is. It just doesn't click. It almost feels more similar in some ways to like a Cosmo. It's super drinkable as well. I think that's probably the weirdest thing is like, it really does go down smooth. Like it just, I'm kind of flabbergasted, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, when I put this spec together, I fully like was not expecting it to be good. You know, I try to make it good, and so like I balanced the ratios in a way that I thought would be, you know, okay. But this flavor combo, I was just looking at, and I just like could not see a way that this flavor combination actually worked out. And yet here we are. Here, miracles do happen, I guess. God damn. Well, this is a devilishly delightful little drink, but we'll see who the magic favors in the simulation. The Texans start off with the ball and open with a sad return, but a respectable opening drive to the 26-yard line. Stroud climbs the pocket and fires deep, looking for Kirk in the end zone, but the jump ball is broken up and falls to the ground. As a result, they trot out Fairbairn, who sends the 43-yarder through for the first points of the game. The Chiefs respond by flying down the field, making it all the way to the red zone in less than 2 minutes. From the 17, Mahomes tosses a quick pass to Noah Gray in the flat, who runs it in untouched for the touchdown. The offense-heavy first quarter continues with the Texans marching down to the 6-yard line. Stroud checks it down to the flat, but the Chiefs rally and tackle Johnson well short. As a result, the Texans open the second quarter with another Fairbairn field goal. The Chiefs continue to pick apart this vaunted Texans defense, again flying down the field, this time to the 1, where they pitch it to Kareem Hunt, who barely manages to break the plane to put the Chiefs up 8. Instead, it's the Chiefs' defense who forces the first punt, and their offense pays off that stop with yet another red zone trip, capping this one off with a 15-yard touchdown to Rashee Rice. However, the Texans' offense responds quickly. On the other side of the 2-minute warning, Stroud fires to Kirk on the shallow crosser for a 26-yard touchdown. 2 minutes and 3 timeouts is a lot of time, though, and the Chiefs use all of it to put even more points on the board, as Mahomes fires to a wide-open Kelsey to set them up at the 13-yard line. The chip shot field goal is good and extends Kansas City's lead back to 2 scores. It's 24-13 at the half. The Texans' defense hasn't found any answers after half, as the Chiefs are once again in the red zone and once again end their drive with a Rashee Rice touchdown. Instead, it seems the most they can do is slow them down, as their next score doesn't come until halfway through the fourth quarter on this quick goal line pass to Xavier Worthy. Facing 4th and goal from the 10, Stroud checks it down to Woody Marks, who manages to fight across the line for a garbage time TD. Now they're still down 3 scores, but they decide to toss an onside kick attempt in there for good measure, but the Chiefs recover it. However, instead of just running the clock out, the Chiefs decide to throw, and Mahomes is picked off by Derek Stingley, the Texans' first defensive stop of the game. The offense can't hold up its end of the bargain, though, as the Chiefs send a blitz on 4th and 6, sacking Stroud and ending the game for good. Well, this was probably the best this Chiefs offense has looked all year, absolutely firing on all cylinders against what has been a truly dominant Texans defense. For context, the Texans haven't allowed 30 points in a game at all this season, so this would be their worst showing by a pretty wide margin. What's far less surprising is their offense struggling, as that just hasn't been able to get going this year. I could see the Chiefs pulling out this win, but the momentum is definitely on the Texans' side right now. Obviously, a big part of this Chiefs offense looking so good was Mahomes putting on a classic Mahomes masterpiece game. 359 yards, 4 touchdowns, and that 1 interception was an absolutely unnecessary garbage time interception. This would actually be his most passing yards in a game so far this season. He came close with 352 passing yards against the Colts, but that required overtime and 9 more pass attempts. As for Stroud, he had a solid game and took care of the ball, but just couldn't really elevate the offense, posting a respectable 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. Another big part of this Chiefs offense was Isaiah Pacheco returning to 2023 form, posting 91 rushing yards on only 11 attempts. This is pretty crazy efficiency. 11 carries is around what Pacheco has been averaging per game, but he typically only turns those into about 50 yards. Honestly, neither of these teams ran the ball a whole lot, but they were both very efficient, with Woody Marks averaging 5.8 and Stroud scrambling for 10.8 yards per attempt. That's actually not insane for him. Scramble yardage tends to be higher per attempt than traditional rushes, but he's yet to crack 40 rushing yards in a game this season and put up 54 yards in this one. As for the receivers, surprisingly it was Hollywood Brown leading the way for the Chiefs, posting his first 100-yard game of the season with 120 yards on 7 catches. This is likely part of Madden just generally not being good about wide receiver ones, as the Texans' leading receiver was Christian Kirk, who had 6 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. As of writing, both those receptions and yardage would be a single game high this season. Nothing too unexpected down at the bottom of the receiving stat sheet. No running back inflation in this game as Marks and Chubb combined for only 3 targets. Also, completely unrelated, but Marks and Chubb sounds like a really sketchy law firm. Over in the Monte Carlo sim, we see Mahomes put up another really impressive performance when you account for the biases of the sim, throwing for 238 yards and 2 TDs on average. Stroud came in with just under 200 passing yards, though Woody Marks had a really impressive rushing performance, putting up 93 yards. Honestly, Pacheco's and Marks' performances kind of swapped, as Isaiah only had 66 yards in the Monte Carlo sim. Both of the star wide receivers take their spots atop the receiving stats in the Monte Carlo sim, with Rashee Rice putting up 71 yards and Nico Collins having 63. Likely as a result of all of that offensive output, we see a really wide spread on the score distribution, with no single outcome occurring even 3% of the time. Of course, it's a lot of offense relative to what the Monte Carlo simulation usually puts out, with the overall average of all 10,000 games still well below the Madden score, as it's Kansas City 23, Houston 19. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the magically delicious, fruity, and nutty Flaming Devil. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.